afternoon and welcome to CEC Gurukul lecture. In continuation with my series on Indian sociological tradition, today I am going to discuss about the contribution to Indian sociology by Professor I.P. Desai. I.P. Desai's work are not well read or are not people don't know about his work, but it is very important to discuss his work, his life and his contribution to the growth and development of sociology of India. He is kind of contributing at a time when the discipline of sociology was in its nurturing stage. It was just in a kind of beginning, and I.P. Desai, with a critical historical perspective, tells us how to understand society in India, and by doing that he contributes to the growth and development of sociology of India. So to begin with, in the first part of the lecture, I will look into his life, his work, some of his important articles, books that he has written, in terms of his methodological theoretical position that he has taken, and also to look into how significantly he has contributed to the growth of sociology of India. So to begin with, his full name was Ishwarlal Pragji Desai, and among his known friends and colleagues, he was better known as I.P. Desai or just I.P. He belongs to the second generation of sociologists. Here by second generation, I mean he is kind of continuing some of the founders figure in Indian sociology like D.P. Mukherjee, G.S. Ghurye, R.K. Mukherjee. So he is one of the students of G.S. Ghurye, and therefore he has been kind of considered as second generation sociologist in India. And he though belongs to a stage a little later than these founding figures, his contribution is in doubt unique and in kind of very essential for understanding the growth and development of sociology of India. And that is how he starts kind of getting into teaching, research, and also in terms of being a member of the Indian Sociological Society, continuously contributing to articles in terms of theorization, in terms of understanding, doing research. So in that sense, he was a true sociologist, and therefore contribution cannot be kind of neglected. When we look into his kind of personality or I.P. Desai as a person, we see that he was not only an academician, he was an activist. And here the role of activist becomes very significant because remember, sociology in India was at a nurturing stage. At the same time, the context in which these I.P. Desai was kind of growing up or being kind of part of a higher education, writing, there was a lot of issues, there were a lot of problems all around. So he was influenced by Marx's writing, and therefore he kind of acknowledged himself as a political worker. He was an activist, a political worker, and you can kind of have multiple labeling of the personality that I.P. Desai was. I.P. Desai was born on 31st July 1911 at village Parujan, Taluka Navsari in Surat district of Gujarat. And again, to like A.R. Desai that I did talk about in the last lecture, Gujarat was at a very central, especially for national movement, social movement, and a lot of activism in terms of social movements that were going at that point of time. So his local location or his context in which I.P. Desai was born and brought up becomes very significant. So in continuation with his studying, he completed his primary and secondary education in Parujan and Surat respectively. When he was in Surat, he stayed in the Anvil hostel, which kind of was a hostel based on caste community. That is, all male members or boys of the same caste would stay in the same hostel. So that is why it was a kind of a privilege also, because he belonged to the Brahmin community, that education became an asset through which he was able to transform society, not only understand, not only create theory, but also to look into the reality, to explain the social reality of India from an empirical perspective. So after completing his education, he joined the MTB Arts College in Surat in 1929. But due to his involvement in the civil disobedience movement, he could not complete his studies. So this was again another context that we need to keep in mind, especially when we are trying to understand the biography of an individual, that this is a time when a lot of things are happening all around. So education did get affected because he himself acknowledges in his autobiography that he was a political worker and he was very active in the nationalist struggle. So his education did suffer for a period of time, but it did not cut him totally from it. He came back to the education and joined the Wilson College in Bombay and got his bachelor's degree from Bombay University in 1934. He then enrolled for his master's degree at the School of Economics and Sociology in Bombay University. To keep in mind that this is a time in the 1930s and 40s where sociology as a discipline had not kind of nurtured, and all sociology was taught along with economics. So he was studying both sociology and economics, as it was a kind of a tradition of that time. As I already said in the beginning of the lecture, I.P. Desai was a student of G.S. Ghurye. He completed his PhD under G.S. Ghurye, and the title of his PhD was Social Base of Crime, which was based on library work. So in the initial, he was not doing any kind of field work, he was not going into the research, it was just kind of literature review of the problem that he had undertaken to do research. In terms of looking into his teaching experience, as a doctoral student, he worked for his PhD thesis at the night and worked as a teacher during the day. Now this again reflects a little bit about the background of the individual, that he kind of was not very comfortable in terms of just studying. He took a double advantage of his time, and he kind of taught in the daytime and did a lot of research work at the night. So in 1944, the month of June, he got the first research assignment. Now this research assignment, his role was as a research assistant to Professor Ghurye, and the title of the project was Fast, Feast and Festivals of Hindus of India. Now this project that he was working with G.S. Ghurye was his first academic research assignment. He was kind of very into it, and that is a time that he begins going into the field for collection of data. So after completion of his PhD degree, he started teaching at Samaldas College at Bhavnagar in Saurashtra in 1945. In 1951, he left Bhavnagar and joined the Deccan College of Postgraduate and Research Institute. Now, we see the Deccan College of Postgraduate and Research Institute was not much for academic teaching, and it was more in terms of research based. So, it was from this experience of doing research at Bhavnagar that I.P. Desai inculcated the desire to open a center and kind of a research based center, and therefore he kind of will be quitting it and starting off his own center. When he was at the Institute of Research, he was working under Iravati Karve. Iravati Karve was the head of the institute, and I.P. Desai was under Karve. So now when we have two important prominent figures under whose influence I.P. Desai was doing his research, and both of them influenced in terms of his research as well as writings. In 1952, he joined the Maharaj Saviraj University of Baroda, where he worked as a reader with Srinivas. So the M.N. Srinivas, who is again considered as a prominent figure in Indian sociology, was kind of his colleague. So he is also kind of, when we read his autobiography, or when we read his contribution to a large number of issues like caste, social change, he will be in disagreement with M.N. Srinivas. He is kind of not very comfortable of the structural functional approach that Srinivas takes on, and it is from this critical perspective of looking into the reality that I.P. Desai contributes his own valuation or explanation of social reality. In 1959, Desai was appointed as professor and head of the department, and this was when M.N. Srinivas had left Baroda to join the Delhi School of Economics, and therefore Desai was promoted to the post of head of the department. He remained as the head till his voluntary retirement in 1966. After he took his voluntary retirement, he got busy with setting up of the Center for Regional Development Study at Surat for carrying out research in social sciences. And this desire to set up a Center for Regional Development was because he was kind of not very satisfied in the way in which the sociology was growing in India, in terms of there was a kind of a deflection from the universal science, and therefore he wanted to kind of focus more on field work and research, and this was the objective with which he started the center. He retired from the center in 1977 as the founder director. So we see he has almost 3 to 4 decades of doing research and academic teaching at 4 different institutes, and each of them has a very strong influence on his formative years or in the growth of I.P. Desai as a sociologist. Being associated with G.S. Ghurre, Iravati Karve, M.N. Srinivas, he kind of develops his own way in which the sociology of India could actually progress. And when we see this whole 4 decades of his research and writing academics in sociology, he was most of the time doing much of the reading which was conventional in sociology. If we look into the influence of sociology of India, much of the research in India in the 1940s were being done in terms of a Western perspective. So the most comfortable areas were caste, kinship, family, untouchability, reservation, migration, social movement, and social change. Now this is the most important aspect when we look into the biography of I.P. Desai, that he has almost worked in every field. He has kind of given us a theoretical understanding, rather a kind of alternative understanding of most of the areas of research which was conventional in sociology at that time. So the most important work which is kind of considered as significant when we look into the sociology of India was his study of the Vedchi movement. This was the kind of a life history of the Vedchi movement from 1922 to 1967. So it was a kind of a long period of his involvement with the movement, and on the basis of his involvement he kind of arrives at certain kind of understanding, and he also claims that it was one of the first sociological study done by him. Why? Because much of the understanding was that the social movements which could be kind of done from a perspective of historical going back to the history and trying to understand the past. What I.P. Desai did was that he was trying to understand the perspective of those involved in the movement. So he was interviewing, talking to leaders, trying to understand the ideology of the movement, how the workers of the movement adapted themselves to the new ethos, and kind of given the direction to the entire movement. So he is using a historical approach, no doubt, but then he is doing it in terms of kind of documenting the perspective of the respondent themselves, and that is kind of why he calls it as a sociological research. Most of the research in this study of the Vedchi movement was done on recording personal interviews, and it was a kind of a oral interview or documentation of the interview which he was taking. His reason why he calls it as a sociological study, though he is going back to the history and covering a long period of the time, he is calling it as sociological because of the view that he is documenting the perspective of the workers of the movement, and also all the kind of people who were associated with it. So the leaders, the workers, people who were affected by the movement, and that is kind of something which is later on kind of goes on to build ethnographic study. So he is laying the base of it in terms of documenting the perspective of the respondents themselves. So the published monograph, he did not cite any bibliography because he did not make reference to any literature. This was a pure kind of work which was only documenting what people were talking to him, or the oral tradition that he had documenting. So he is not giving any bibliography. There is no mention of any reports, documents, or published and unpublished material. It was entirely his own understanding of the Vechi movement that he kind of documents. So this kind of makes us understand somehow the theoretical and methodological issue that I.P. Desai was trying to teach to the sociologist or students of sociology. So when we look into his review, according to R.K. Mukherjee, the method that he uses was unique. And he was not only critical of his contemporary, he was not only critical of Srinivas and other G.S. Ghurre and other sociologists, but he was also trying to do was that he was bringing us an inductive analysis in the place of deductive. Now, what is inductive analysis and deductive analysis? So, inductive analysis, the researcher kind of does empirical field work and builds a theory of his own. So, when we look into the Vechi movement, he is not reading any theory, he is not looking into any literature which was existing. He just went, studied it and created or kind of formed a theory of the movement. So, that is inductive. When we talk about deductive analysis, it kind of starts with the theory. You kind of test theory with reference to the empirical reality to see whether the theory is correct or incorrect. So, I.P. Desai was following an inductive analysis in all his research, and this inductive analysis which or his uniqueness, which he is kind of different from the sociologist of his time, is very evident when we look into the study of Indian family. Now, study of the Indian family is very significant because 1940s and 50s, if we look into the study of India by the Western scholars or by the Indian scholars themselves, much of these studies were around the institution of family, village and caste. And these Western Orientalist discourse were trying to understand family with reference to the impact of industrialization and urbanization, and the general understanding or valuation was that the Indian family was affected by urbanization, and as people were moving towards industry, towards cities, it was disintegrating and the joint family was becoming kind of nuclear family. This was more or less the understanding of a family that was prevalent. Now, I.P. Desai will not kind of begin with the theory which is existing. He does not begin with the true attributes. These theories of family would define family as co-residential and a commensal unit. Co-residential, that members are residing in the same house, and commensality is that they are eating together, this common kitchen. So, the kitchen and residence was the two attributes which was kind of taken to explain jointness. So, he was not kind of looking into it, and he kind of said that when we have to understand family, it is very important to understand kinship integration, and in that context he will therefore kind of go on to evolve a critical approach to sociology. He will kind of begins by kind of not going by with any assumptions or not taking into account any of the theory which is existing. He goes into the reality, looks into the reality, studies it and arrives at his own understanding or own valuation or the other term would be explanation of that social reality. So, in that context we could see that his research was kind of a combination of anthropology and sociology, which where like there is kind of a difference whether they belong, they are more or less same or they are different. we're not going to debate here, but what is evident is that since it involves a lot of research work, it's a lot of ethnographic work, his methodology was kind of not making any distinction between anthropology and sociology. So, he did not make much difference in the use of methods. These are different methods when we kind of do research methods. We see there are number of methods, and these methods are also differentiated in terms of the uses, which discipline is using, for what subject are they being studied. IP Desai is not making any distinction between Indology, ethnography and sociology. So, Indology would be more in terms of historical analysis of literature review, ethnography would be in terms of field view, going to the field and doing research, and sociology of 1940s, 30s, the most prominent method would be in terms of surveys, in terms of doing samples and collecting large amount of quantitative data. So, here he is not making any distinction, and was of opinion that all of them could be kind of in a way combined to arrive at a more holistic understanding. So, in his autobiographical sketch, because not much of thing is written about IP Desai, what all we learn about his life is much from the autobiographical sketch that he wrote and published in 1981. Here, this autobiography becomes very critical. Why? Because he is one of the few scholars who kind of not only narrates the work that he has done, he does a critical assessment of his own work. He is critical of the work that he has done and is also suggestive of the ways in which this could be improved. So, this doing a critical assessment of your own work in a way reflects scientific spirit, and that is what he was kind of oriented towards, developing sociology as more as a scientific discipline. He was evaluating his own work, he was pointing out at the weakness, and he was kind of doing a self-assessment of it. The attitude indicates courage and commitment to scientific principle of research, and so he was kind of committed to the science of sociology of science throughout his life. Now, when we look into a biography or the way the work of any thinker, as I have done in the earlier lectures also, it is very important to understand the context in which these thinkers are growing up and the influences on their life. So, as already stated in the beginning, the first influence on Desai's life was obviously G.S. Ghurye, who was his PhD supervisor and was also kind of doing research, mentoring his first research work. So, though he is kind of mentored by G.S. Ghurye, but when we look into the contribution of caste, we will see how IP Desai will differ from G.S. Ghurye, how IP Desai will do a critical assessment of Ghurye and give his own explanation of caste and social change in India. Another influence which is very important to understand IP Desai is the Marxist influence, and since he is kind of more of an activist and a political worker that he defines himself as, this influence is coming from the fact that he is influenced by the radical thought of Marxism in terms of bringing about transformation and bringing about revolution, which will kind of bring about a change in the system. So, the ideological influence, this is the ideological influence of Marxism that is on IP Desai. He kind of gets involved in lot of activism or lot of activity with the poor, the underprivileged, at the villagers, untouchable tribals, and even those who kind of were affected by the social movement. So, he wanted to kind of do a correct measure, introduce a corrective measure to eradicate the problem that the poor, the underprivileged or untouchables were facing, and that is where he kind of expresses his revolutionary zeal. Now, when we look into the life and work of IP Desai, it is very important to understand the kind of two phases in his life. The first is the formative phase and the second is the productive phase. Now, why do we look into these phases? Because these phases will help us to understand the growth of an individual as a scholar, as an activist, as a kind of a contributor to a field of knowledge. So, what does it mean when we use the term formative phase? Obviously, formative would be the initial stage, or that is the period from birth till the kind of teaching and research experience when one starts producing, in the sense here the production would be in terms of publication, writing books, research articles and so on. So, when we look into the formative days, we see that his life in terms of upbringing, schooling and higher studies. It was kind of very evident from his autobiography that he has spent his childhood in the village Parujan, and this was his ancestral place. And though he moved to Surat and Baroda and other places, he did not kind of disconnect his linkage with the rural or the ancestral place, and he kind of revisited it, observed the changes that had taken place, and also kind of maintained his rootness to the place where he was born. So, in Surat, he was, as I have said in the beginning, that he was staying in the caste hostel, to the caste to which he belonged, and here he found the influence of Dayalji Desai, who belonged to his own caste. And Dayalji Desai was kind of a social movement leader. He was very active in the social movement, and he had a very strong influence on I.P. Desai. So, when we talk about his formative year, we kind of look into the roots that he has. So, his roots were in the rural village, and when we read about social change, or we read about migration, the pattern of migration and occupation in a South Gujarat village, we see that he kind of expresses his connectedness or his rootedness to rural India. So, that is very important, that the reason why he is talking so much about transformation, rural India, family, is coming in from the ground to which he belonged. So, when we look into the productive phase, the productive phase would be kind of the time then he starts writing, he starts publication. And earlier also we have seen that when we were discussing his teaching experience, he was associated with 4 institute, and these are all kind of very important. They play a very important role in the foundation of sociology of India. So, these 4 places were Samaldas College in Bhavnagar, Deccan College, Postgraduate and Research Institute in Pune, and the MS University of Baroda Center for Social Studies, Surat. So, when we look into these 4 areas, when he starts kind of first teaching assignment to setting up of a center, it kind of shows his transition, not only transition, also his growth as a sociologist. So, that is the formative or the productive phase of I.P. Desai. And in order to learn more about I.P. Desai, it is very important that we read his original text. His original text on family, on migration, on caste and everything is available. So, we should read the original text rather than rely on commentaries in order to understand the contribution of these thinkers. With this, I come to an end of today's lecture. Thank you.